I'm getting the signals that it's time to start. So, ladies and gentlemen, very warm welcome here in Bled and also in this room. We will have here, I believe, a very, very interesting panel titled Preparing for Unknown Futures. And I'm very glad to see the full conference room because we have a big competition next door. They're talking about security in NATO, so I'm very glad that you are here with us. My name, for those who don't know me, my name is Sabina Stadler, and I'm Ambassador and Chief Strategist at the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs. But it's my great honor and joy to actually welcome these 5 distinguished panelists who are on stage with me. This is going to be, or we will try to make it as a very intriguing panel, very topical. I think this is a topic discussing the future. I think it's a topic really to talk about. And this amazing group of panelists will help us to turn the expectations about the future, maybe from fear to rather something we are looking forward to. When I was actually enjoying my holidays on the coast and on the seaside, I was reading this book. This one. It's Melanie Challenger's book, How to Be Animal. And I decided to use it with some quotes and with some lines from this book for this panel because I think when we are thinking about the future, it's really about linking who we are and what our experience is and what we actually expect from our future. So, the human mind is an amazing natural phenomenon, and only we have it, the humans. With our mind, we are able to fantasize, deceive, control, but also imagine the future. So this is what Melanie Challenger actually wrote in this book, and this is what I decided to use as the opening quote. So, as humans, we are the only beings in this planet that are able to grasp the notion of future, what the future is all about, and imagine it, as you heard before. But is imagining the future enough to prepare for the future? That's the question we will try to tackle today. I guess that preparing for the future really depends on our perception of the future, how we understand what future is, but maybe even better, what actually the futures are, because we have multiple choices in front of us, what may happen tomorrow and beyond tomorrow. So we all differ as human beings, meaning that how we see the future also depends on the differences among us, meaning different age, different education, different upbringing, different character, but also information around us, but also our experience. So among us, there are people who say, I just don't care, I live for today. On the other hand, we have individuals who actually fear the future. Then some of us are excited about new possibilities. Some others are, let's say, terrified of what may happen tomorrow. Again, some of us are anxious when we hear about the future. The others are extremely excited about the fast development and different kind of science fiction scenarios that we may have in our heads when we talk about the future. But anyway, when we talk about the future, let me, before presenting our distinguished panel, leave you with one thought of one of the European futurists, Jan Oliver Schwarz, the German author of many books also. He said, we will spend the rest of our lives in the future. So that's why we are here today. Before presenting the panel, maybe engage you who decided to be here with us. Hands up, who is afraid of future? Who feels uneasy, anxious about the future? One? Only one? Two? Okay. Only a few. Okay. Why do we have the panel then? Nevertheless, let me introduce and try to find some answers about the future with our distinguished panelists. So bear with me when I'm going to read now their CVs. I'll start here on my left. Besides me, I have Ilan Manor. Very, very welcome, Ilan, back to Bled. Ilan Manor is a digital diplomacy scholar and a senior lecturer at the Department of Communication Studies in Ben Gurion University of Negev. And he's also a member of Oxford University Digital Diplomacy Research Group. This is where he also published this amazing thing. I brought only the first page because it's got too many pages and it's extremely, extremely heavy. So he's the co-author of probably the first digital diplomacy encyclopedia. So who is into digital diplomacy? This is the book you should grab. He's a very well-known, well-respected and wanted speaker and expert in digital and public diplomacy. He's consulted for many, many different kind of organizations and governments, and he regularly publishes papers, articles, also books. The most recent one I showed you, and there is another one in preparation, which is, Ilan?
It'll come out next year, the first decade of digital diplomacy.
Voila, now you know a lot, even secrets. Next to him, there is Sirkka Heinonen, very, very prominent Finnish future researcher and strategic foresight practitioner with a PhD from Helsinki University with over 40 years of experience in the field of foresight. She's a professor Emerita now in the future studies at the University of Turku. That's the leading university in Europe as far as the foresight is concerned. She heads Helsinki office of the mentioned university's Finland Future Research Center, and her aim is to promote futures learning, future consciousness. She's also an inventor of certain different kind of modern foresight approaches. She is the president of the Finnish Society for Future Studies, chair of the Helsinki node of the Millennium Project, also a member of the Club of Rome. Honorary member of the Finnish Society for Futures, and that's the society which published this book, another extremely, extremely important book. This is Our World of Future Studies as a Mosaic. So one of the newest books published in the field of futures and the foresight. Welcome to you, Sirkka. Thanks for being with us. Next is Matthias Lüfkens, who is the founder and the CEO of Digitips. That's a kind of a boutique communications agency, meaning that Matthias is actually a public diplomacy whiz with over 25 years of experience in digital and traditional communications. His clients are different kind of international organizations, but also corporations. He's a trained journalist. He started his journalist path actually in the Baltics, in Tallinn, where he started to know, let's say, more kind of east of Europe. Then he became a deputy editor-in-chief at Euronews. He worked for World Economic Forum, and now he works for himself, but also a little bit for Interpol. So Matthias, very welcome. Then we have Maricela. Maricela is a very experienced diplomat, specialized in multilateralism, but currently she works at GESDA, which is a Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator Foundation, as Director for Strategic Partnerships. She's particularly interested in areas such as anticipatory science, science diplomacy, sustainable development, human, international security, strategic foresight, and futures. So she has undertaken several kind of researches, mainly on sustainability, environment, and so on. But now, as I said before, she's very much into the science diplomacy, so very welcome here. In Bled and with us. I didn't bring the first page, but check it out. Google GESDA, GESDA, and a radar breakthrough, and you have a peek into their fantastic kind of tech and science foresight for the next 5, 10, and 25 years. Highly recommended. Last but not least, we have Kristofer Nevall. He's a space engineer by training. He has got a PhD in atmospheric physics with the Max Planck Institute in Germany. In 2012, he joined Swedish Defense Research Agency, where he spent the majority of his time as an operations analyst in different kind of positions. But then somehow he ended exploring the future and doing and dealing with the foresight. Currently, Kristofer is seconded to DCDC. This is Development Concepts and Doctrine Center at the Ministry of Defense in UK. And as their main foresighter, he's the main man behind this publication. This is actually the foresight, the last version of the foresight done for the Ministry of Defense for the UK, but it's actually talks about the whole world and actually the global trends. It's a fantastic product. 7th edition is in preparations. So we are very much looking forward to that. And we'll try to do the 2 rounds. I'll ask all the speakers to actually try to stick to the 3 minutes, to leave some time also for you to participate then in the discussion afterwards. And I will start the first round with more quotes from the book that inspired me on the beach. Let me give you this quote. The world is getting nastier and more violent. A paradoxical reliance on technologies aggravates the existential fears beneath us. So, when we face with a threatening reality, we will see greater separation between us and the rest of the world, especially the nature. Kristofer, may I ask you for a comment on this? What do you think of that? Is something similar featuring also in your product, the product that I showed before, this product?
I would like to start with that's quite a quote to unpick. There's many aspects to it, and I would also have to say that the product is very much a team product. It's not just me.
I know.
Hey, we're a large team. Looking at the quote again, I don't fully agree with everything that is being said. When it comes to violence, do we live in a more violent society or not? I think that's been debated for quite a while. And as with any trend, it depends on how far back in time you will actually look at. But as of today, 2024, we heard yesterday, 92 conflicts in the world. It very much seems that we are in a very violent situation at the moment. And I think that's unfortunately so. But at the same time, things have changed. Technology has given us some very powerful offensive and defensive platforms for warfare. And if we look at the situation in Ukraine, where we have trench warfare again, 100 years after First World War, there's much less people in the trenches. There's much more technology. Technology is being destroyed by the minute, not comparably as to human lives. So there are 2 sides of the story. And for nasty civilization, I would like to just answer with another question. Which period in time would you like to live? And I would say this period. This is the best period in time to live. Of course, we still have problems. I don't disagree with that. But looking at the diversity, the equal rights, and how we're evolving, I would prefer to live in this time than any other. And if we go back to the title of the Bled Forum, Parallel Realities, most people today live in cities. We don't work in the nature. Our connection to nature has changed. But that is also human development. It changes. It always changes. And those that don't change, they're being left behind. So I think it might be anecdotal, but our connection to nature actually increased after COVID. And I also see that today we're much better at appreciating what nature can give us and how important nature is for human health, and also that nature in itself is probably the best tool to handle climate mitigation. We can use wetlands for mitigating floods, trees and forests and parks and cities to handle heat waves. So I think we passed the peak disengagement, so to say.
Excellent. But you mentioned today 3 times, and we are supposed to
look
talk
ahead
about the future.
Yes.
So let's make a double check now what you told us. With all the knowledge, all the technology that we have, we're still kind of stuck in today. So, Sirkka, maybe I can ask you, you come from, let's say, academia circles, so you deal with education. Do you believe that the knowledge we possess today is the right knowledge for the future? Because, another quote from the book, we are not only constrained with what we know, but by what we can bear to know. So what kind of knowledge do we need for tomorrow and beyond tomorrow? What do we need to prepare better?
This is a huge question. So if I may, I would like to open up a little bit what it means to think about the future, preparing for the future, and what kind of knowledge do we have now today, and what kind of knowledge we can have about future. So future is all about change.
Excellent.
Future is uncertain, and future is unknowable to a large degree. But the good news is that actually systematic, holistic futures thinking is a skill that we can learn, we can enhance, we can develop. And I would claim that it is a critical skill for survival, for governments, for countries, for industries, for organizations, for individuals, citizens even. So, and what is the relation to knowledge? So, actually, in future studies and futures thinking, there are 3 principles. We cannot predict future at all. We can only anticipate it. And the second principle is that there is not just one future. It is not predetermined, but there are several futures. That's why the name of our field is future studies in the plural. That's very important. And the third one is that we can have an impact on the future. So actually, this kind of approach in future studies, of course, the aim is that we generate foresight knowledge to support decision makers. But the problem is that usually decision makers are only interested in probable futures. And from the point of view of future studies, we emphasize the whole range of possible futures. It is of critical importance to study possible futures, the whole potential, which also covers these kind of threatening scenarios and threatening risks, crises, etc. So we have to address them and discuss them. It is a human characteristic that we are interested in futures, but it's also in human characteristic that we are resistant to change. So if there is negative knowledge, even wake-up calls, there is this kind of tendency. So that's a challenge that has to be overcome. So future studies wants to open up boldly potential developments and trying to then start discussion among decision makers and stakeholders and ordinary citizens. choose
Excellent.
preferred futures.
Thank you. So foresight is not just about scenarios and science fiction, but it's really actually using the scientific methods to try to deal and understand the future, and then to impact the future. And who else can do that if not decision makers? Maricela, you work in JESDA, and the A at the end of JESDA stands for anticipation. So as humans, we always want to know more and better. This is actually what drives our race to achieve all the new technological advancement, let's say. The quote from the book, maybe, from an animal that came to know itself, we will become a knowledge that came to abandon itself. So you're dealing now with anticipation in science and technology. Where are we now? Is the knowledge really going to, kick us, abandon us? Is the knowledge going to overtake us? Or how do we handle the future on the future of technological advancement and development?
Thank you, Sabine. I think that there is not only one answer to that provocative question and to that quote. By the way, I downloaded the book after you enticed us with it, and I'm halfway through it. It's fantastic. I think that this is a very provocative and philosophical statement. Actually, if you dissect the sentence, let's say, the quote in two, at the beginning, you see that the human beings are being developed as biological entities, and pretty much driven by instinct and survival. But then the second part is about transcending that aspect and actually evolving in our consciousness, right? And actually getting this curiosity towards knowledge and an augmentation of the information that we have at our disposal. And I think that the quote, of course, is very linked to the title of the panel, which is Unknown Futures, which to my like is very neutral, because futures could be uncertain, but they can also be hopeful. So hopefully, after this conversation, we feel less anxiety towards the futures. But what I wanted to underline is that one way to feel less uncertain or anxious towards what's coming our way is actually by anticipating futures. Because if we detach ourselves from our biological existence, it means that we also open up an opportunity to augment that consciousness, to enhance our human agency, to reflect, to think, to act, and to decide, what kind of futures do we want to live in. So I think that this kind of reflection is not optional nowadays. Historians say, or have called this era as the era of great acceleration. So there is no indication that the acceleration is going to diminish. So I believe that with scientific and technological developments, we need to think what kind of futures do we want to create, and we need to use that knowledge, that curiosity, that consciousness to build the best possible futures, sustainable and enhancing well-being for everyone.
Excellent, thank you. Managing the future. This is probably one of the key ideas, but how to do that, especially in the flood of disinformation, misinformation, fake news, twin realities. So I'm looking now at Ilan as there is so much scientific evidence. We have science, offering us proofs, but still, there are these parallel realities, and the other reality might be this kind of digital reality. And if I quote the inventor of the World Wide Web, humanity connected by technology on the web is functioning in a dystopian way. And Maricela just mentioned hopeful futures. Is digitalization, digital tools really about dystopia? Is it really all black and dangerous?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the invitation to be here and to be along with my fellow panelists. I don't think that the future is set in stone, and we also need to remember that technology alone doesn't determine the future. It's the interaction between technologies, governments, and societies. But I think that what characterizes the last decade or decade and a half is that we've entered the mode of reactive digitalization. And what I mean here by reactive digitalization is that every few months or every few years, Silicon Valley launches a new technology, and we simply, as societies and as governments, have to adapt to that technology and to the rapid change that follows. And reactive digitalization also means that we accept the financial logic of certain technology companies. So for instance, we know that the logic of social media companies is to keep us engaged and on the platform for as long as possible. And in order to keep us on the platform, Meta will show us racist content, hate speech, it will show us conspiracy theories, whatever it needs. And we kind of accept that this is the financial model, and we're willing to have these companies in our societies, which is quite surprising. And Silicon Valley has this great word to define our era, which is disruption. I don't think disruption is the right word. I think it's a word made up by marketers in Silicon Valley. What we're really talking about is greed. It's about companies putting out products and putting out technologies without really thinking about how they impact societies. So in order to prepare for the future, I think we need to move from reactive digitalization to proactive digitalization. What does that really mean? Well, first it means analyzing what the future's digital landscape is going to look like. So when I work with foreign ministries or civil society organizations, it's all about asking them, what will our digital world look like in 2028 or 2032? And how do we begin preparing today for the challenges and opportunities that digital tools will bring? And a lot of foreign ministries engage with tech companies, they engage with tech CEOs, but they don't engage with the R&D units, with the people working on the prototypes of the technologies that are going to shape our landscape. And I think that's very important. The second, as proactive digitalization, is to take greater measures to safeguard our societies. And I think a society has a right to protect itself from nefarious digital technologies and nefarious digital actors. And probably the greatest threat that we face at the moment and in the immediate future is that of visual AI. Because the name given to this year's Bled conference is parallel realities. But in a world of visual AI, you live in a world of conflicting and competing realities. Some users see an AI video of Kamala Harris dressed up as a communist commissar, which Elon Musk just tweeted. And some people see a picture of Kamala Harris holding a gun, which was generated by AI. And other people see an image of Kamala Harris speaking at a political rally. And what happens is that you live in a world of conflicting and competing realities. And a society cannot function without a shared definition of reality. And diplomacy cannot function without a shared definition of reality. So I think this is a great threat to our immediate future and something that we need to start to contend with as part of this idea of proactive digitalization.
Excellent. Thanks for that. So, what is reality? Till we don't know it, we are not able to function as a society. That's quite an intriguing and bold thought. It's pretty amazing. I'll turn to Matthias now, because you are a social media wizard. And if we don't know what reality is, if we are therefore not able to function as a society, if we are preoccupied with everything that's broadcasted, like I have a quote here, members of our societies are broadcasting their feverish anxiety about the new technologies in equal measure to those who deliver euphoric messages of unprecedented opportunity, meaning how is everything around us? How is this fear of future and not knowing what comes next? How is this shaping the opinions, thinking, mindset, and what the proper public diplomacy can do about it?
It's interesting. I am neither anxious nor euphoric about these new tools. Actually,
That's why you're here.
Every time I look at the opportunities, I'm going to tell you a story. Back in 2006, that's 18 years ago, I put the World Economic Forum on YouTube. YouTube hadn't been bought out by Google. That happened then in September. And at the time they said, Matthias, YouTube, the kids who are watching videos in their dorm room, they are not our target audience, and you will see they will not watch our videos. Today, 2 decades later, this panel is live on YouTube. People can watch this live. YouTube has become a tool that we're all using. Our kids get their information from YouTube, and frankly, they're no longer watching TV. They're no longer watching the evening news on TV. They get it on YouTube, or even on Snapchat and TikTok, which is just a vertical YouTube. So for me, it's really kind of looking at these tools. How can we use it in a positive way? So I think, really kind of, I wouldn't say I'm euphoric, but I'm curious and really excited, to see what other tools will be out there and how can we use them. I know there's all the, the disinformation, et cetera, but let's positivize, let's look at the positive effects of these digital tools.
Excellent. I love this, curiosity. That's fantastic. So I'm curious now, dear audience, what would be your biggest fears? A couple of ideas? A few ideas? No fears? Please, go ahead. Just come on. No need for microphone. We can just shout. We'll have a discussion later on. Yeah. Do we? Do we really know it? What if there is another pandemic and we will lose many people? We can only anticipate, yes. No. Exactly, yes. May I ask you to continue this debate at the very end? When we have a debate, I was now asking, what are your fears? I was asking only for one word. Sorry. Please, go ahead. Just war. What else do we have? Electric breakdown. Anything? Earthquakes? Please. Climate change? AI. Okay, you see? So panelists, these are the fears of our audience. So please, in the second round, try to tackle those. And again, please be short and crisp that we can actually continue the debate that the gentleman kindly started. Where do we start? There was an AI mentioned. Maricela, you mentioned even the human beings, augmentation of human beings, all this kind of, I don't know, CBI, for example, computer-brain interface, having, chips in our heads in 10, 20, 100 years to come. How do we communicate what the future brings to the people without scaring them? How to bring the science and the evolutionary actually achievements closer to the people? Because it seems like the science and all the technology happens in the labs, pretty closed environment.
Well, that's key. I think that to lose that fear of science, we need to embrace science and know that we can use it for good and for bad. This is the dual use of the technology and of the scientific breakthroughs. And sometimes we believe, or we tend to think that science is for the scientists only, right? In the ivory tower places. But in reality, because we're in touch with technology all the time, and we can listen to what the academics are saying, that in a couple of decades, everything is going to be, surrounded by these synthetic biology developments, by artificial intelligence, is going to be so ambient. So it means that we need to do the homework, and it's a two-way street. So I believe that at all levels, including for, regular citizens, we need to develop our curiosity, augment our knowledge into what science is bringing us. And it could be done just by Googling on the internet, but also looking at articles and information that is around us in our communities. But the most important thing is that we need to work together. Because if governments are thinking that technology is not affecting their business, this is wrong. The future of the internet, of encryption, of sensing, communications is quantum computing. So we need to lose that fear of quantum computing then, and we need to understand what it's bringing us. And we need to create partnerships that make sure that we develop already today, with that knowledge of anticipation, use cases and applications that benefit all, because the democratization of science is also an aspect that sometimes gets overlooked. We don't want amazing scientific developments to be enjoyed by 30 people on the planet, right? We want these breakthroughs to be accessible to everyone. So I think that we need to solve this conundrum between losing our identity or human agency and relying so much on technology, by incrementing our understanding of what this technology is bringing us. And as Sirkka was saying, it's through anticipation that we understand the possibility of the futures that could come. I think that we need to be very creative and use art and science and dance and music and nurture dialogues like this one, and fund initiatives that bring the talent everywhere and that are inclusive enough so that we can have futures that really spark our hope and make us feel that we're going to reach a state of well-being that is unimaginable. So we lose our fear of viruses, for instance, or artificial intelligence.
Excellent, but we are only, let's say, 50, 70 in here. So how to spread the message, Matthias? How to communicate science, how to bring science and the advancement closer to the people, that they would embrace it and feel it's theirs too?
Well, it starts with education. At the primary level, we have to educate our children on using digital tools. I think this is very, very important. And as far as I can see, in no country is social media or digital media taught, apart from the dangers of the internet. Yes, we know the dangers, but nobody really is teaching our kids how to set up a Facebook page. If they want to become a baker, how do they sell their baguette in the morning? I'm living in France, kind of set up, help them to set up a Facebook page. What you post, what you share. I suggested that in the parents-teacher meeting, saying, why don't we put our kids on Facebook, or basically create a page for the schools so the kids can manage it as the new school paper of the 21st century. And they said, are you crazy? You want to put our kids on Facebook? No, not at all. But it's really kind of, and by that time they were already on Snapchat, on other platforms where we have no more control over them. And I made sure that I am on social media before my children were. So, I could welcome them. Oh, you're also here on Instagram. And the latest one is, I don't know, have you heard of Be Real? Anybody heard of Be Real? Hands up. So basically it's a French social network. You take once a day, you're prompted to take a picture in the moment, be real, you have a 2-minute window. It's stupid, it's social media. Guess what? The outgoing French Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, is on Be Real to connect with the teenagers. And it works perfectly for him. So I wish that more people would, kind of explore these new channels to learn what's coming there. It might not last long, we don't know, but let's be curious. Let's open our eyes to these new tools and not say, oh, and another social network, because some social networks die, you know, remember Clubhouse or Friendster, you know, so, you know, we never know. Maybe even, you know, X will go down. It's already banned in Brazil.
Thank you. Mentioning education and learning, this is really about breaking taboos in a way. But even with the Foresight products, I think that we are breaking certain taboos. Kristofer, what you did for the UK Ministry of Defence, it was not just for the Ministry of Defence. It's also for the public. So what would you say? How to bring the foresight and anticipation thinking closer to the public?
Yeah, as you say, the book, the upcoming Global Strategic Trends 7, it's almost 500 pages. 500 pages. It's a mountain, literally. And not many people are interested in reading all of that, and I understand that. So how do you get that across to people? And especially for me, strategic foresight practitioner, my main task is actually to inform decision makers, and they do not have time to read all of that. So my task is to bring that information, transform it into knowledge for them, not just the Ministry of Defense, but across government. What we try to take a holistic view of the global strategic trends, and not just defense and security, but also economy, climate change, demography, societal challenges. So it's really important for everyone, and especially the public, I would say, because they are the one that votes for the decision makers. So they should be able to have that information to make their decision on what political party should be able to take the decisions for the country. And so how do we manage to do that? One of the important parts, I think, is transparency. We write a lot of things. And of course, why do we write it? What are the sources? What is the background? What are the assumptions? Because we need to write down things. The future is unknown. It's impossible to predict. I would say foresight is more about avoiding mistakes than actually predicting the correct futures. We're talking about futures all the time. So the transparency, why do we say what we do? We can see it as we paint a map. We paint a big picture, we draw a map, and then on that map there's different futures. And depending on where you want to go, you can draw the pathways. And when you engage with people, I think these engagements are really important to convey the knowledge and the information. Where do you want to go on that map? Where do you want to be in the future? That will give people the understanding that everyone has agency, that we can actually be part of changing and shaping the future by just looking at where do we want to go, what decisions do we need to make today to actually go in that right direction. We may not end up exactly at that point, but at least in that branch of the futures tree, that's where we're aiming for. And whereas the global strategic trends is more of an encyclopedia with different projections. We said about the projection of demography, that's one, but there's several. They paint a big picture. What are the implications? We did implications project for the Nordic countries, where we take all of the world. It's very interesting, but it's not necessarily relevant for the Nordic countries. So what does it actually mean? We did the scenarios. I think scenarios are quite a good tool to work with this, because it's a bit of storytelling, and humans, we like stories. Storytelling is really good, especially if you include some characters within it. So then you can work with the futures through scenarios. And that ended up being this product, and it was actually presented today, so it will be available online from tomorrow. So just making these products available for everyone, I think is really important, and engaging through these events, but also other lectures and discussions through games, you name it. But everything that is not just a book.
Excellent. You used the term everybody's agency, like everybody's got agency. it's everybody's, how to say, let's put it like it's the activity of every single person actually that could impact the future. And this is what we try to present here, that it's not just waiting for the future, something falling from the sky, but we can actually have impact if we actually use the correct tools. So I'm turning now to Sirkka actually, because you are in academic circles actually studying futures. I would like to hear from you, what is the scientific importance of foresight? Tell us something about futurism as new science. Maybe this will be the first answer also to the gentleman's question. And maybe a sub-question, shall foresight be a part of every curriculum from today on?
Okay, thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to separate future studies and future research and foresight. I'm not using the term futurism because there may be different connotations with that. But future studies and future research is a scientific field that already started 1950s. So it's a broader area, and foresight, strategic foresight, is a newer field that grew out of future studies, and it's relevant to this time horizon. Future studies and future research can have a very long time horizon. Foresight wants to engage maybe a couple of decades and not hundreds of years, but there is a connection. Similar methods, such as scenarios, Delphi studies, etc., are being used, but definitely this kind of link between scientific future studies and strategic foresight, and then decision-making, practical, even day-to-day decision-making, it exists. But going back to the question of communicating science, it is important, even in case of scenarios. It's just not enough to have manuscripts of the future. They have to be communicated in a way that they can be experienced. So that, for example, in this room, we could have 4 corners representing different scenarios, and participants could immerse into these futures, images, scenarios. That makes it more understandable, the results, what is presented in foresight results. And to mention that in Finland we have in Parliament permanent committee for the future since 3 decades already. And they have a permanent representative of our Finland Futures Research Center. So they have, in each meeting, they have this scientific advisor present there. So I think it's very critically important to have this bridge.
Excellent, thanks for explaining. I hope that this is now much clearer what we are talking about, what is actually predicting, what is forecasting, what are statistical methods, and what actually the future studies and the foresight is all about. It's quite new in Slovenia, so hearing Finnish experience that this kind of studies have existed for decades, and that actually the government and the parliament in Finland are doing it on an annual basis, have been doing this for 3 decades already. I think it's time to, reflect where we were all these decades. Okay, let me wrap up this second round with Ilan. We heard about science, we heard about the communication, about the foresight, the futures studies. For sure, the future is going to be digital. So what is the outlook for the future? Can the future be digitalized even in a way that it's digital tools helping us or telling us what is there beyond tomorrow and beyond 2030?
Yeah, so there's a saying in Hebrew that only a fool tries to predict the future. And I think this is very true. The CEO, 2007, the CEO of Lehman Brothers says we're going to have the best year ever. 2008, he's out of a job. So it's a bit risky trying to predict the future. But if we build on what we've heard at this Bled Strategic Forum and in other forums, it seems that if we're talking about the next decade, we're talking about a decade of complex geopolitical crises. And one of the people in the audience mentioned the topic of war. And it seems that we're going to have complex geopolitical crises in the sense that these are crises between groups of states or different states, each of them with different interests, and that resolving these crises will need a way to meet the interests of all of these different parties. And I think that if we follow this logic, say, for the next 10 years, then there are three things that we need to focus on that relate to digital. First is restoring trust in governments. And if we look throughout the world, we see that in democracies all over the world, there is a decline in trust in governments. More and more people believe that the government is lying to them, that the government is hiding information from them. And if a government is not trusted, then the government cannot manage a crisis, it cannot narrate a crisis, and it can't function on the international stage. So it's an interesting question how to restore trust in governments, and digital can be a blessing and a curse in this sense. And the second is if we're going to a world of crises, how do we kind of restart the mechanisms of international diplomacy? And it appears, this might not be the case, but it appears that the international system is somewhat paralyzed. It appears that a body like the UN cannot guarantee the safety of countries anymore or ensure that a country is not invaded by another one. And so there's these big questions of how do we restore trust in governments and how do we restore trust in the multilateral system, and third, how do we find areas of agreement between different countries? And here what I think might be interesting is to consider, at least for some countries, what you might call a tech-first approach to foreign policy. So what do I mean by this? Not looking at technology as something that divides us, but maybe something that we can agree on. So for instance, there's very little that China and America can agree on at the moment. They don't agree on Ukraine, they don't agree on the Middle East, they don't agree on Taiwan, but maybe America and China can agree on the need to regulate cryptocurrency and to stop crypto fraud. And maybe a tech-first approach to foreign policy would say, let's get American and Chinese diplomats into a room to talk about the one issue that they do agree on. And it's not really about the issue. It's about having American and Chinese diplomats meet one another. It's about enabling diplomats to restore faith in one another, to establish trust with one another, to negotiate an agreement and then say, well, we agreed on cryptocurrency, perhaps now we can talk about Ukraine. So I'm not sure that technology is necessarily a bad thing. It could actually be used as something that unites us, as in a way to restart the international system.
Excellent, thank you so much. And at this point, thank you for being crisp and short, because this leaves us with 20 minutes for a debate. So I would ask now for the microphone, and we will continue with the gentleman who started the debate before. And then we will pass the microphone there, and then to Mr. Grobelnik. Please introduce yourself, and please be concise as our panelists were. So I will allow 3 sentences for your question, please.
My name is Janez Malačić, and now I will provoke a bit. Imagine that you are in 1752 at Golden Triangle in Pittsburgh. My question would be, what language do they spoke there, and how that place looks like today? Then you can imagine what is to speak about the future.
Okay, question goes to?
Just...
whom do you address the question to?
Anybody.
Anybody, okay. Thank you. Can you pass we will collect the 3 questions. The gentleman there with the glasses. Can you raise up the hand to see where the mic needs to go?
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. So let me introduce myself. I'm Blaž Golob, CEO of Go Foresight Institute from Ljubljana. And I'm a colleague of Sirkka in the Millennium Project. So I'm a chair also for Southeast Europe. So the the question would be, what are your experiences? Well, first of all, congratulations to bring the topic of futures and foresight to the Bled Strategic Forum.
Thank you.
And for practitioners, my question would be, what are your experiences in engaging stakeholders when you do a foresight or strategic foresight study? We heard about anticipatory anticipation. So what are your experiences with the inclusion of stakeholders and users of the results of specific foresight? And maybe for the audience, if you can give us an example of some thematic strategic foresight, and then what kind of stakeholders were engaged. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Marko?
Okay, I'm Marko Grobelnik. I'm co-head of AI department at Josef Stefan Institute, National Research Institute here in Slovenia. So AI is all about prediction, forecasting, whatever you call it, right? How much of this technology is actually being used, right, in the foresight? So it seems like to me way less than it should be, right? And at least what do you know, what do you see, since you are totally in this field, right?
Excellent, thank you. Who wants to start? Yes, please, Kristofer.
I think I will focus on the discussion on foresight practitioner, as I've been doing that quite recently. And I would say it very different. It depends on I think the foresight and the futures literacy in decision makers, and especially I'm working quite a lot with armed forces. It differs quite a lot. So it comes down quite a lot to how you frame it. If I frame the problem as this is a war game, we're not doing it for a certain thing against a certain opponent, but think of it as a war game where the opponent might be time, a long-term horizon, then you're shifting it from something completely unknown into something which they're more comfortable, the language might be more comfortable, and then you can start building upon that comfort in a more known area. So that's how we've been using it every now and then. And for this Nordic synthesis, we had a few scenarios, and we tried to shift the mindset into these scenarios without people saying, oh, that's impossible, or this is the most probable future. Yes, that might be so currently, but if we were only planning for the most probable future, we will certainly be wrong. Yes. So frame the question as, if you have a strategy, is it robust enough to actually be valid in 3 different scenarios, in 3 different futures? And when you frame it that way, it's usually easier for them to realize, this is actually the value added by the discussion. This is what we bring to the table. So that's how I've been using it.
Excellent. Maricela, you want to add something?
Also following up on the practitioners part of the equation, I think that it's very important first to feel that the study of futures and anticipation is not only for policymakers to make informed decisions, it's also for us, any citizen, to make informed decisions about the society we want to live on and the agency that we want to build for ourselves. That's the first one. So at GESTA, the Geneva Science and Diplomacy Anticipator Foundation, quite a mouthful, we use the radar that you mentioned that anticipates scientific breakthroughs in 5, 10, and 25 years. And this is the knowledge, this is the futures literacy. So we have the basis, but we do something about it, and we bring to the table all the stakeholders, diplomats, leaders, scientists, citizens, CEOs, private sector representatives, and we talk about what these breakthroughs mean. For instance, in the case of quantum computing, as I was mentioning before, the future is about quantum computing, tackling problems that we cannot tackle today with greater speed and precision. And when we understood that, we created, with our partners, an Open Quantum Institute in Geneva that is now embedded at CERN. And what that institute is doing is already developing use cases, applications. What do I mean by that? Looking at antimicrobial resistance, looking at water leakages, looking at food that is nutritious, looking at the optimization of fertilizers. With countries from all over the world, this is not only for a certain geography, and we are already testing these applications. And the same goes for a neurotechnology application that we have so that we can be informed in our mobiles, about these technologies. So what I wanted to say is that we all need to become practitioners of these futures, understanding, anticipating what's coming our way. The information is available. Download the radar. But do something about it. Let's act together, and let's not think that this is only for decision makers. It's for everyone.
Excellent, thank you. Sirkka, please.
So I may also add to this practitioners and stakeholders question. A very good recommendation is to start with stakeholders, asking them what is the most urgent question that puzzles you, or the problem or challenge that they have, instead of starting to lecture them on the importance of foresight. Through that kind of approach, gradually, then step by step, you can widen the anticipatory horizon, but starting from real problems, real challenges, and trying to then address and tackle and find solutions for them.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else? How about the use of AI? Kristofer, maybe you're a practitioner. Did you use any AI engines, tools, when you did the 6th edition and the 7th edition that is still in making?
The 6th edition was published 2018, and I think the AI at that time was very rudimentary. So,
so the current...
No, I think that there are two sides of the story. Also, that the system has to be acknowledged and audited by the armed forces and the Ministry of Defense, and that can be quite a undertaking. But we are working on how to adapt and use the tools correctly, because I think AI and a human analyst working together is probably the most powerful thing for years to come, where we spend our time and our creativity to do that, whereas AI can do the information gathering and collection of information, and we work on actually what does it mean, do the implications, put it into the right context. We work on getting these tools, but they're not really there yet.
Excellent, thank you for this. I mean, with the AI and the foresight, I mean, when we talk about the AI, it's all about the database, and database is usually the information that includes today and the past. So how really to do the foresight with the information that it's about today and the past? I mean, I've seen the engines where the database consists only of the foresight products. So that's one way, but still cognitive thinking, cognitive input from the human beings, I think it's irreplaceable, let's be honest. And maybe on participatory method using the foresight, you heard our minister yesterday announcing that the Ministry of Foreign and European Affairs just finalized the first ever foresight, and we used also the participatory method in a limited way. So if you're interested, we can discuss this bilaterally. I think we have still time for a few questions. I saw some further hands up. Please, sir. The gentleman there. Anybody else? No? Everybody knows everything about the future.
Hi.
It works.
Hi, I'm Nick Cull, and I'm a historian. And as a historian, one of the things I've looked at is the importance of visions of the future in bringing crises to an end. And it seems to me to be really an important element of the ending of the great crises of the past, such as the First World War, the Second World War, the Cold War, that visions of the future were articulated, which were attractive not only for the winning, in inverted commas, country, but for their adversaries as well, so that at least citizens of those places could imagine successful futures for themselves. So bearing in mind this power of an attractive vision, an inclusive vision, what are your individual visions and who might they incorporate?
Okay, thank you. Quite a demanding question. Any other questions? Who wants to tackle this one? Linking history to the future visions?
So I will say this, I think it's... I will say this, no, yes. I will say this, I think it's interesting in how many corners of the world now most visions of the future are quite bleak. And most visions of the future are quite, Nick, what's a synonym for bleak? Right. Negative. So most
dystopian.
Dystopian if we're talking about technology, but just in general, this idea that we're going into a decade of great conflicts, that we're going into an era of great power rivalry, that we're going into these unmanageable crises. And you know, Voltaire famously said that the present is always pregnant with the future, in the sense that our vision of the future then creates the future. And what we don't really see a lot is narratives of hope. And narratives of aspiration. And I think one of the interesting examples actually has been in the US elections, where suddenly you do have the politics of hope and the narrative of hope, at least coming from the Harris campaign. And you see the great power of a positive political vision of inclusiveness. And this probably is something that leaders, governments, and foreign ministries will have to think about, how to communicate a positive but also plausible narrative of the future. Because if you go now to people in Ukraine and tell them, oh, in 3 years everything is going to be wonderful, they're going to think that you're nuts. So it has to be plausible, it has to be positive, and it has to be inclusive and communicated in some kind of reliable way. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristofer.
You have a comment on that. I love science fiction. I'm an avid science fiction reader, and I guess most people here are at least interested within it. And I once listened to talk about Kim Stanley Robinson. He's quite famous on this topic of visions, and he said he really wanted to write a positive story once, but there was no publisher that wanted to publish it because it doesn't sell. Unfortunately, it's much easier to sell the bleak futures, the problems, the challenges. But the nice and rosy and shiny ones, there's unfortunately less interest from the publication side because it doesn't sell enough. And I'm afraid that might also impact, because you're always being fed the dark stories of technology, the dark story of climate change, of war and whatnot. So I think there are a lot of positive stories, but they're not being spread enough.
But this, sorry to jump back on this, but when Britain wanted to communicate with Germany at the end of World War I, a positive vision of the future, they hired H.G. Wells, and he successfully articulated foundational modern human rights doctrine to the people in Germany and had a tremendous impact. And so I think that finding positive science fiction narratives is not as crazy as it sounds, and this is maybe where we should be looking.
Definitely.
Maybe one addition.
Yes.
We did an interesting study in the Millennium Project on the future of work.
Yes.
Where Sirkka was also engaged as other nodes. We are 70 around the world. And was the future of work by 2050. Mm-hmm. And there were 3 scenarios. One was business as usual. So maybe we come there, we don't know. It will happen. Second was negative one, with all negative consequences, dark scenario. And the third one was a positive. So then for different publishers, we give a fruit for thought in a way, and so interesting to read maybe and to be mentioned. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. This is a good wrap up. Half a minute.
Thank you very much. Why publishers? I'm a publisher. I'm publishing a newspaper for children. So why publishers are not publishing good news either in fiction or non-fiction is because we don't want to read it. That's the problem, and we don't want to buy it. But if I may just have a half a minute question. So any positive messages for the kids of today regarding unknown futures? Thank you.
Let's save these messages for the very end, because I had exactly the same task for my panelists to actually end up with one sentence each as a takeaway messages for you. Maybe just a comment on the positive futures. I think it's really about the demand and actually the consumers. Who are we communicating different kind of truths to? So it's the demand that needs to be created for positive messaging and also for the foresight. It's not up to us who try to understand the future and try to find it as intriguing to actually do something about it and work on the topic. It's actually up to all of you to create a demand for foresight and the future studies. So it's not for the futurists and for the foresighters to actually force you with their products. It's rather you asking for the products. So let's try to be fair to the people who are going to occupy this conference room just after us. So before thanking everybody, I would just like to ask the panelists for the takeaway messages, like one sentence each, what you want the audience to take away and to teach the kids. Where do we start? Maricela.
So for children, but actually for everyone,
yes.
Use science to build the future and remember that the future is today.
Excellent. Kristofer?
I had a different sentence in mind, but now I changed my mind. The future is not set in stone. We all have a role in shaping our future.
Excellent. Matthias, want to be next?
Already here, but it's not evenly distributed between those who are digitally savvy and those who aren't.
Excellent. Sirkka?
And the topic parallel realities also applies to the concept of time. 3 dimensions of time, past, present, future. They all come together. Future is already here in this present moment, and let's include children. So in Finland, we try to introduce futures thinking to schools, and I hope to kindergartens as well. No age is too early to start futures.
In Finland, they consult kids on the legislation about them. It's unbelievable. Ilan.
So yeah, just to end it, maybe to reverse the question and ask the kids what kind of future they want, and then go to Silicon Valley and to our tech entrepreneurs and say, okay, now create the technology to make this future possible.
Fantastic. You've been wonderful, wonderful audience, and even better panel. Thank you to everybody for being here for the stimulating debate and carry the message of the future. Big thank you to my panelists. And what can I say? I mean, prepare for the future, embrace it, don't be afraid of it, because the future is all you've got. Have a very nice remainder of the day.